everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Theodora, and in this video I'm going to be filling some pages and might create this book 3. This is something that I haven't done in quite some time, so it's that time of the year again. I'm really excited about that, so let's get started. Alright, so the very first page I'm going to be doing says, create realism. Make a drawing as realistic as possible. Well, challenge accepted. We're going to be making a realistic drawing. I actually haven't done that in quite some time. First, I'm going to lay down the pages flat on the surface, which I guess the pages didn't want to cooperate at this point, but anyway. The first step to making any realistic drawing is to find a reference picture. I use Pinterest for that. I have organized all my pins in boards, and I've picked out this gorgeous image of macarons, which is the one that we're going to be drawing today. Now, in my opinion, a very crucial part of making a realistic drawing is to always add a grid beforehand. This is not a difficult process at all. In fact, it is actually really easy to make once you get the hang of it. I have got a tutorial on my YouTube channel on how to make the grid, in which I also show you my realistic art process. So if that's something you'd be interested in watching, I will definitely link it in the description and put in the iCards, so check that out if you want to. Basically, the grid acts as a guideline when sketching. It can help you get the proportions right and also just generally make the sketch look as close to the reference picture as possible, which is why I think it is a very practical step to take when drawing realistically. Anyways, so to be honest, the sketching part of making a realistic drawing has become the worst part for me because I just feel like it's so boring when compared to coloring and using coloring pencils. So honestly, I just can't wait for it to be over. But with the magic of editing, everything is possible really. So now we're going to move on to the next part, which is coloring. I have already picked out a color palette. Now let me just find a marker. Just give me 1 second. Oh, there it is. So now I'm basically going to pick out some markers. These are going to act as a base layer, over top of which later on I'm going to use coloring pencils to add the details. Why would I want to go in with an alcohol marker base instead of just going straight in with the coloring pencils, you may ask? And to that I'd have to say for 2 reasons mainly. Firstly, because of the thickness of the paper, which is printer paper. So as you probably already know, printer paper is just not a very thick kind of paper. Instead, it's really thin and therefore not ideal for adding too many layers. And secondly, just for practicality reasons, honestly, because adding a base layer with alcohol markers is a much quicker process when compared to covering an area only with coloring pencils. So I would be done with the base layer much more quickly and I would just be ready to move on to the details. Using markers, I also added the areas where there are shadows in the macarons and also in the background, as you can see. This way it will be much easier to add the details where the shadows are with the coloring pencils afterwards. Speaking of coloring pencils, it is time to bring out the reference picture again and find the coloring pencils that match the reference in order to add details and basically the final stage of making a realistic art piece. Although I guess the final stage of making a realistic drawing is probably the highlights. And to be honest with you, I didn't think that drawing these macarons would be that difficult of a process. However, I was proven wrong because the crust around the macarons, especially the crevices in the crust, are so difficult to capture and replicate exactly on paper. That made the entire process just so time consuming. And don't get me wrong, I know that realism is meant to be time consuming because you have to focus on all those details and everything to make an exact copy of the image basically. But I mean, it was pretty boring to just sit and stare at the image and try to replicate the crust. As you can see now, I'm using a layer of white over top this pink macaron, and that is because when I was doing the base layer with the alcohol markers, I didn't have the exact pastel pink, so I just basically had to tone it down a bit with the white to just make it look closer to the reference picture. And finally, it's time for the last macaron, the 8th macaron to be exact. Going through the same process of tweaking the colors a bit, trying to replicate the shadows, the crust, the shadows in the background, and of course adding highlights to each and every one of the macarons. And it's finally done. This one took a while, but honestly, this was so worth it. I actually really love the way it turned out. And moving on to the next page I'm going to be filling. For this one, I started the sketching process before filming it. But anyway, this prompt says, create stained glass. Only use straight lines to make a design. Add color in the shapes created. Now, before you say you did not follow the rules correctly, it only says to use straight lines, and these are clearly not straight lines. I know, and you're correct. But I had the best idea for this spread, so hear me out. So the moment I read the words stained glass, an idea popped into my head. Remember the movie Beauty and the Beast and the stained glass rose that they had in the film? That was exactly what I thought the moment that I read the prompt. So I thought to myself that that was an opportunity and I definitely had to draw that. And so while I was scrolling through Pinterest trying to find the perfect reference picture, I came across this image. And that was just the moment I knew that I had to redraw it. And coloring this drawing was just such a relaxing process. It almost felt like using a coloring book. And now that I'm thinking about it, I haven't used a coloring book in so long. And so I guess this video is kind of matching with the coloring book madness going on social media and on TikTok right now. And for this drawing, I didn't want to just use alcohol markers, so I also went in with some coloring pencils to add depth and highlights. And that is it for this video. I managed to make 2 drawings in my Create This Book 3. Leave a comment down below and let me know which one was your favorite. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye!